Okay, it said my browser failed to load the clip. I hope you guys saw it, but welcome back to the breakdown with your host, BaseDaKID and Tony the Pugilist Boy. We are children of the game. Apologies for being a couple minutes late. That was my fault this week, not Tony's. But you know, few bits and pieces taken care of. How are you, Tony? How is everyone in the chat? Let us know where you're at and what you're doing.
Well, my friend, everything is well. Obviously, coming off the back of a boxing packed, stacked weekender. Feeling quite good about the show tonight. Feeling like we've got a lot of energy to exhaust in terms of talking about stuff. So yeah, how are you, brother? Obviously, times are hard.
Look, the weekend was it was a long weekend. A lot of people have seen me maybe in the watch along at the night time. I've got vast knowledge on most of the stuff that took place in the night. Everything that took place at Selhurst Park, I don't really remember a lot of it, if I'm honest. I was there. I was running up and down, trying to secure interviews with people that didn't show up for most part of it. In and out of a lot of fights. A lot of it was, I'm not gonna lie, felt a bit boring, monotonous. I haven't gone back and re-watched any of the fights yet to see if maybe I was being a bit harsh on the night. But I said it on my own channel. I'm gonna say it now, and this isn't. I don't want this to be an overall reflection of boxer, because I'm not gonna do that, and that's an unfair assessment. But I have to feel as if this was. I think it's actually the worst event I've ever attended. Like on the whole, like the whole as a whole thing, from the fights to just the atmosphere, the day, like it was all just to the point where, shout out to Mulla Mulla. I don't even know if he's in the comments yet, but I saw him literally at the end of the night. I saw him at the end of the night, and I held him up. And this may have been before he'd even realized, you know, about what I was kind of getting on with that weekend. But he said to me, I beg you don't talk about this on the breakdown. So that tells me exactly how other people was feeling at the time. So yeah, look, we're gonna touch on some of that stuff. I don't know about you, Tony. Obviously, I'm letting you kind of take lead this week, but I won't be speaking heavily on any fights on that card. I'm just letting everyone know that from now.
I mean, in all honesty, we have so much content to go through that nothing is really going to take as much time as we normally give it. I think we're going to kind of skip through a lot of action. The fight of the night or the weekend for me undoubtedly was, or the big fight of the weekend was Tank against Frank Martin. We'll do a deep dive on that one, but there was a lot of not really worth talking about fights this weekend. Yeah, so let's get in amongst it. Let's see who's in the house. Blessings to everybody who turned up. Do you want to do that roll call?
Let me do the roll call. First one in the building was Stay Blessed Be Real, and he came in with the energy I was hoping for. Shout out to you, Jonah 31 as well. Untraceable, Philip Answer in the building. Salutations to you, Philip. Jermaine Biz in the building. Yes, Mulla. My gosh. Shout out to you. Dan the Man, SC15, hardest working guy on Twittex. Yep, shout out to you as well. With all of the emojis I was asking for yesterday. C Boogie in the building. Elijah Selassie as well. Nige.mp4. Shout out to you. Mezit Ozil. Robert Broney. Travis pulled up. Even if it's for a couple minutes. Thank you very much, Travis. Fully appreciated. That's exactly what I was hoping to see in the building. Jay Lanks as well. Sonny Ack. James. Tyler MF Durden. Alexander the Great. Alexander Sankey. Jimbo Jones. Reese Cooper. Noir Black. Daniel J. Boateng. Jam Down. 187. Shout out to Jam Down. Saw Jam Down over the weekend as well. Very, very entertaining conversation we had. Folks, it's live. Shout out to you as well. Yeah. Fight Fan TV live. I see Fight Fan TV. Danny Glover in the building. Martin Leia. And Leia, sorry. Shout out to you. Yes. G Chain in the building as well. The horological one. Big up to you. October Red in the building. Shout out to October each and every time. Queen of the channel. Flash Gordon. Yeah, it looks like that. I think that's everyone. All right, great stuff. We won't hold it against KG for not pulling up, but he is doing the watch along on his own channel for the Portugal game. So no worries with that. But yeah, cool. Let's get into it and let's not keep this people waiting. Where do you want to start? Where do you want to take it? Let's go.
Well, we'll do it as we normally do in chronological order. So based on that, we're actually starting with the Friday action here in the UK. Very quick bit of action. Literally will take me a couple of minutes to go through some of that. But essentially, there was a card up in Bolton.
I don't know where it was held, to be honest.
Bolton. Wasserman card. Headlined by Abbas Baroui versus McGowan, whose first name escapes me. But essentially, it was for the European Super Welterweight title. That was the main bit of action on the card. What was a one-sided fight between the emerging Baroui, who seems to be Kelly Sauerland's sort of darling. He's headlining cards left, right, and centre. The fact that he's French and he's headlining across UK says that he's got a lot of hope for him. As you can see, a little bit of action, nothing too much to talk about, but essentially he won this fight by 11 rounds to 1. Very good boxer, very stylish, but McGowan was hard. You know, he was hard as nails. He kept in every round. You know, he was.
Sorry, Tony. He pulled up. He stopped the stream. Even KG's pulled up tonight. Yes, that's what we like. Right? Shout out to you, KG. I know you obviously watching the football. I hope it's a good game. I haven't had the chance to watch it, but yes, salute to you. Thank you very much, G. All right, sorry, Tony. Carry on.
No worries. So yeah, McGowan was a strong kid. He kept himself in the fight for the whole fight, but yeah, Baroui just too strong. He actually reminds me of Christian and Billy. You know, Caribbean, French extraction, and then just strong as nails. Stands in front of his opponent, throws hands on a very fast basis, but physically is very strong. So that was the main event of that particular card. But on the undercard was a bit of a shocker. Lastminute.com, a fight that was only made, I believe, last week, was LeRon Richards. And this was not what was expecting. He was fighting a guy by the name of Steve Woodall. And LeRon basically got shook up. I didn't even know what round it was because that actual part of the card wasn't on the televised program. It was on the pre-show. But there you see, Steed gets a flush right hook on the chin of LeRon. He manages just to wobble backwards, but then is open for the return right hook, which finishes him off. Misses one, but this one, boom, that's the one. He does get up to the referee's count. The referee asks him to step forward one. He does that, hands held high, but the referee looks in his eyes and clearly realizes that LeRon Richards is in no state to carry on. And as a result, the fight is stopped. So that was the first upset of the weekend. We move on very swiftly. Evening to all the latecomers. So we move on very swiftly. We will go to the Selhurst Park Stadium card. Of course, boxer card, which we've kind of alluded to, was not the greatest of fights. When you looked at the card, it had good boxers on it, but none of the actual fights, other than the headline fight, at the time were the type of fight that you thought were going to make great entertainment. As it happened, the Isaac Chamberlain versus Jack Massey turned out to be probably one of the better fights of the night. So I'm going to start there, if I may.
Go for it.
This one was very heated from the weigh-in, as you can see here. These two guys were having words at the press conference, which I attended. They were having words at the weigh-in. There was a lot of beef. The two of them were basically at each other. But I still felt that Isaac had enough to win this fight. But actually, it didn't seem that he did have enough. He definitely was in the fight, as he always is. He came in well prepared, looked in good shape. But in the end, what you're seeing is Jack Massey working in between shots and finding Isaac with shots where you kind of felt like Isaac needed to be more responsible in his defense. Now, Isaac actually isn't the greatest of defensive boxers anyway. You know, his losses to Billam-Smith and to Akoli, you know, he did take punishing punches in both those fights. However, against the likes of Jack Massey, you kind of felt he might have enough to outwork and defensively be astute enough to take what Jack Massey had. But you see, Jack just continues to work both hands. And he catches Isaac with shots continuously, especially that overhand right. And it's the work rate, which, although Isaac isn't not working, Massey is matching everything he has. And he kind of knows, well, if you throw 3, I'm going to throw 4. You know, you see those trademark hooks from Isaac. You know, I actually, while I was watching this, thought to myself, I'm going to rename Isaac the Mongoose, because he throws hooks very much in the style of Bob Foster. You know, you see those hooks to the body by Isaac. Massey just knows he just has to tuck his elbows in, take those 2 shots, and even when a hook is blocked with the elbow, I can throw shots on the inside of that. You know, look, every time Isaac throws, Jack's going to throw something back. He never gives Isaac the time to set work and get comfortable in that work. Every time Isaac throws, Jack's throwing more. You know, you can see it there. You know, Isaac offloading, boom, take that. Isaac unloading, boom, take that. Every time. That was the status of the fight through the entire 12 rounds. And essentially, I wasn't surprised at the end of the fight when Jack Massey's hand was raised as the victor. Base, your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, so of this whole fight, I think I saw about 3, maybe 4 rounds. Now, the 4 rounds I saw seemed very reminiscent to kind of what you said. I saw more towards the end of it where both guys were like tired. And like in the 11th and the 12th, it looked like Isaac was the one that was at least trying to come forward, and Jack Massey is the one that maybe run out of more gas. But he just sort of did well, I guess, just nullify in the clinches, and just sort of, it was a lot of hitting and holding and separating from the referee in sort of those last 2 rounds from what I remember. But prior to that, yeah, it looked like Isaac was trying to find the cute, accurate shots, like the ones that are gonna sort of win that round for him dominantly, whereas Jack was just willing to throw shots wherever they landed, was willing to just work, be consistent, go in between the jabs, go in between the backhand, just literally take every sort of time that Isaac threw 1 at, he would maybe throw 3. So even if those 3 weren't that clean or that nice looking, and Isaac's 1 was nice, Jack just seemed to was just outwork and outland for the rounds that I saw, like in totality. I can't 100% say if that is exactly how the fight went and played out, but that's the impression I got of it. So when it got to the end of it and they was reading out the scorecards, outside of nothing more than hope, I think you could really say that Isaac could maybe get his hand raised. Jack Massey deserved victor, very short notice. coming into the fight. It was like 4 weeks or 5 weeks, I think. And he did what he needed to do. So congratulations to him and to Joe Gallagher, and also big shout out to Jack Massey, because apart from Francesca Hennessy earlier on in the night, he was the only one that actually came to the media center and did some interviews after his fight. Some others managed to do some in maybe their dressing rooms, I think, but yeah, he's the only one that kind of came out and had chats with the media. So yeah, congrats and shout out to him for that as well. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
Cool, perfect timing, just as we see his hand raised as the new EBU European champion. So as I said, that was for me the best fight of the night. As you mentioned before, Francesca Hennessy did win her fight. I got to see her after. I had a quick chat with her after her fight, but I didn't actually see the fight. I hadn't arrived in the arena by the time that took place. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, look, very briefly with regards to that one, it was a hard fight for her, especially the first few rounds. Like I don't think she's used to, obviously at this stage, women that are actually coming to fight believing that they're actually going to beat her. So there was a few like defensive lapses, I would say, in sort of the first few rounds. A lot of times when she was maybe throwing the jab out or throwing the right hand after it, like she would shoot the shot, but then the hand would dip down to the body and not come back up in time to the head, hence why she might get caught in between shots. She had her best moments though when she was actually doing exchanges, like punch for punch in the pocket, like swinging sort of shots over the top, because she was able to roll. She was able to sort of roll under some shots and sort of come back with the counters, and she was ending up winning a lot of the exchanges, shooting the last shot in those. But when it was trying to do the boxing on the outside, I felt like her timing was a little bit off, especially in the early stages. But she did win enough of the rounds, like clearly, convincingly. I was speaking to Ra Holcomb just before I was running off to go use the bathroom. I said, I think she's got this fight 77-75, and then that's exactly the same scorecard that the referee dropped. So yeah, he saw the same thing that I saw from media position, and then obviously she had she broke down in her post fight regarding her nan passing away during camp and everything. So then that made more sense to me as to maybe why it was a bit sloppy here and there. But just getting through it and still being composed enough at the age of 19, I've got no criticisms, complaints. I can save those for the next fight if I see them again. But I had that conversation with her afterwards. But yeah, shout out to her. Very good performance under the circumstances. And shout out to Boats for the $4.99 super chat.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Boats.
All right.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll continue with Boxer Card. The next fight I'll review will be the Ben Whitaker versus Ezra Arinyeka. I had the pleasure to spend some time with Ezra on the Thursday at the press conference. He was just so there was a shop owner in Box Park who does African clothing, and he wanted to give Ezra some free clothing. So he asked me to make an introduction. Obviously, I didn't even know who Ezra was, but I had a quick chat with him, and I took him in the shop, and he tried on this clothing, and it was all very nice for him. And I've got to say, pleasant guy, very pleasant guy. A very impromptu meeting, but I had to say, I came out of it thinking he's actually quite a respectful, nice gentleman. Obviously, he talked himself into this fight with Ben Whitaker by turning up at the press conference and making it out like he had the antidote to Ben. Obviously, having now seen the fight, he clearly doesn't. But what he has is he does have strength. He took some really hard shot. He very unorthodox in some ways. But he's put his name in the lights for a small minute. and you know, we don't know where we might see that name again. Now, the main thing is we're looking at the development of Ben Whitaker, and unfortunately, the same things that were talked about Ben before this fight are being talked about him after this fight. Very nice and attractive on the eye in the ring in the first 4 or 5 rounds. As you see, the movement is supreme. The head movement is exemplary. The picking of shots is excellent. You know, all of this looks brilliant. However, against a limited foe who's coming on, you know, again, probably the same 4 weeks that you just talked about for Jack Massey, quite simply, we are expecting development to show in terms of his ability to manage fights.
Well,
Now,
hold on, Tony, just before you carry on, to be fair, no, Ezra had full notice for this fight, the same amount of time as Ben had in preparation. Like he knew about this fight from early.
Okay, apologies. So what we're looking at is, with the development of Ben, is fight management, the ability to know, right, what am I going to do in each round? And the way I look at this is to go, Ben manages fights as badly as Tank manages fights well. Because when I look later on and we talk about Tank, you see, I know what I'm doing. I'm looking at where I'm going to improve in the fight, where I'm going to see errors that you're going to make, how I'm going to set traps for you, and ultimately how I'm going to dispose of you in a fight. And those skills at this moment don't exist with Ben. He has great talent. As I said, I could watch that for 4 or 5 rounds and go, wow, he's putting on a clinic. He's not getting touched. He's hitting this guy with sharp shots. But at some point in the fight, you need to be able to turn on the gas and improve and increase your accuracy and your work rate to the point where you can overcome an opponent and at least send him into a situation where he's in trouble. And that's what I never found with Ben. Apart from the very last round, he at no point in time did he have Ezra in any problems where Ezra was at a point of, oh no, I'm in deep trouble. I'm backing up against the ropes. The status quo of the fight, as you can see right now, is Ezra going forward, throwing hands, and Ben just missing and countering, which, as I said, looks good for 4 or 5 rounds, but going down the stretch, we want to see more. There's clearly room for improvement. I believe he has the technical and capabilities to do it, but something is clearly fundamentally wrong in his work rate or in his mindset and in his corner work to be able to say, right, now, do this, step on the gas here, create opportunities by doing this, that, or the other. Over to you, Base.
Yeah, I won't really add much more on this one. I mean, to answer this question by Alex, I don't think he sits down on the shots as much as he was previously. And I think part of that is obviously, if you're going to be a mover, like if you're thinking about the exit, or okay, I'm going to hit and not get hit, you normally don't plant your foot as hard, because then it's a lot harder to get that reflex and reaction to move out of the way. My only issue, I guess, with this fight is, you know, prior to it, I know Ben said that he wants to, you know, he wants to basically make an example of Ezra and Yekov, because he doesn't want someone like this to think that they can just get an opportunity again if they talk themselves into it in the future. But based on that performance and not being able to get him out of there, he comprehensively beat him, embarrassed him, and that it wasn't a competitive fight in any way, shape, or form, minus maybe the headbutts and the elbows that, you know, you don't expect in a boxing match. More people are going to be looking for the smoke. More people are going to be calling your name. Then they're probably not going to be scared of becoming a meme. And even if you're doing the showboaty stuff, well, there's no knockout at the end of it, so they'll still get a very large purse compared to maybe what they're used to. and more people are gonna be confident if they don't feel like you've got the power to really take them out. So that's the only thing that I would say in addition to you. But in terms of a performance, you know, I mean, I don't think Ezra is of the same quality and standard of maybe a Leon Willins, who he fought in his last fight. Obviously, Leon was a bit more negative, trying to do the counter boxing from time to time. Ezra was a bit more come forward, but I thought from the first round, Ben would probably get him out within 3, just by the way that he had that guards that he put up. It was this wide out there type guard with no structure to it, and part of that is obviously having such a wide body, but there was just nothing to it. And I thought Ben's gonna find shots all night, but then he just, you know, I'm not gonna say labored to a 10-round decision, but there was more of a statement that needed to be made, and it's not like Ezra was just like trying to survive the entire fight. So I felt like there were opportunities to close the show early and actually make that statement that you wanted to make. But in terms of the actual boxing skills, yeah, it's Ben. It's what I know of Ben. It was crisp, it was clean, it was composed. It just wasn't as entertaining or as definitive as maybe I and most other people would have liked. And if that's a criticism, I hope it's received in the right way. But yeah, just stuff to work on.
Just reading through some of the comments. There's quite a bit of commentary going on about Ben in the comments. Yeah, I'll leave it between you guys in the chat. To be honest, I don't think there are any questions that we haven't already answered.
Yeah, let's hurry up and get through this boxer stuff, because we got better stuff to chat about.
Yeah. So we move on to the main event: Chris Billam-Smith versus Richard Riakporhe. Obviously, I say obviously, some of you may not realize this, but Richard Riakporhe, local lad, Crystal Palace fan, someone very close to the Undefeated podcast, and therefore was very much receiving the support of most of the Undefeated pod stuff. Yeah, looked all right in the presser, looked all right on the scales. There was talk about pre-fight about the Madonna connection. I'm not going to say what you think I'm going to say, but it kind of maybe, I don't know, something seems not right with Richard Riakporhe on the night. Something just doesn't seem right. You know, we talked about previously, or I know conversation had been had about how Chris Billam-Smith had appeared to be regressing slightly. You know, took a lot of punches in his previous 2 fights. And we thought that with the way that Richard Riakporhe could throw punches and his knockout ratio, that he could put a hurting on Billam-Smith, knowing that this was a rematch, and he knows what Billam-Smith had come with previously. Alas, it wasn't to be. If I'm just commentating on what I see, Richard Riakporhe, for me, was very poor. First and foremost, the jab was awful. He's not moving his feet as he steps into. He's not moving his feet as he launches the jab. He's not doing anything. It's a pure arm shot, and quite often it's falling short because he's not closing distance. On that occasion, he did close distance beautifully with an overhand right. But the jab is the most important part of a boxer's resume, as far as I'm concerned. And Riakporhe, his jab is poor. You see it there. In this situation, it's actually landing a couple of times. But overall, he's not really stepping in with that jab. I think you could probably see that with this situation. Yeah. He's got the ability to make a step and a jab and go like that one. Go straight through the guard of Billam-Smith into his face. There, drop short again. And the problem is, he doesn't set anything off because he's waiting for Billam-Smith to come into his kill zone. And the thing is, Billam-Smith, when he comes in the kill zone, he's letting hands go. And when he lets hands go, Richard's reaction is, I'm going to hold one of his hands. I'm going to clasp the arm using my elbow, or I'm going to wrap one around him. And essentially, we end up in the Ecoli mode, where Riakporhe now becomes a clinger honor of Chris Billam-Smith. When Billam-Smith leaves his hands free, as you see here, he does a little hold there himself, Billam-Smith, I see. But now you see Riakporhe. He's got head on shoulder and he's holding round the waist. Billam-Smith primarily wants to get himself in the kill zone. Forget your jab because you ain't throwing it with any power. I'm going to get past your jab and then I'm going to unleash my punches on you. Now, Billam-Smith, I know you said this before, Base. He's clever himself. He does actually hold, like you see there. He initiates a hold, but he's very clever. He'll initiate a hold and release it at the right time. So he's very clever in how he does that. But more often than not, he's looking to release off shots. Yeah, he might tie you up for a second, but his tie up is even looking to offload punches. As you see, Billam-Smith on some occasion beating Riakporhe to the jab. The shorter man beating him to the jab, and then the jab setting up something on the back of it. So overall, Riakporhe just wasn't reacting and was unable to do enough work in sufficient rounds to win those rounds. Billam-Smith built up a head of steam just by working his hands and being active. And it was only in the second half of the fight, at this point we can see now, where Riakporhe starts to unleash the punches. And as you can see, he is actually moving Billam-Smith, and Billam-Smith is now having to hold. But too little, too late. You know, he didn't do enough of that. He didn't do enough of that in enough rounds. He didn't do enough of it in rounds to allow him to win those rounds. You know, you offloading 3 or 4 in a round when Billam-Smith has unloaded 10, 12 of his own on you, ain't going to cut it. And as a result, again, I wasn't surprised. I had literally by round 10, I was stood with Base, getting myself ready to run out the arena and get ahead of the fleeing crowd. Because I knew what the writing was on the wall. I knew that there was no way Riakporhe was going to win this. Base, over to you.
Well, if you remember, when this fight was going on, I was watching from ringside from sort of, I guess, round 1, very close to where you were, literally about 10 feet away. And by round 7, I left to go and get my stuff. Because I said this, first of all, I was like, not even about, oh, this is a foregone conclusion, just this fight is boring. Like it, I mean, Chris Billam-Smith was very effective. Like, I want to give him all the praise in the world because, you know, he's been written off more than most or others at this point. And for as limited as he is, he gets the game plan perfect. That's the first thing. That same way, he'll be very active with his lead hand, or very sort of active on the inside, but then he'll hold, but then make it seem like it's the other person that's holding. So when the ref breaks, they're looking at the other person, not focusing on him, and he's just doing just enough in that moment to keep the fight kind of at his pace, at his tempo. And Riakporhe just didn't react to any of that, and the fight wasn't that dissimilar from the first one. So it's not like, oh, they were both trying out different styles and having to make adjustments. The first one was more action-packed, but it was very, very similar. The holding, the smothering, the untimed punches, but in the exchanges, it all was very, very samey. The only difference was they tried to be a bit more patient in the I guess maybe in some of the exchanges or the setups to the exchanges. So yeah, I was getting my stuff. I came back out. I remember I saw one good punch from Riakporhe. I think it might have been around 9 or around 10. And then by that point, if you remember, Tony, I said to you, I was leaving, I think, at round 11. And then I think as I was heading out, maybe the end of the 12th round, obviously it's a stadium, and they wouldn't let me out the same way that I came in, so I had to walk around the long way. But yeah, like by that point, I was gone. I was at the entrances by the time that they read out the scorecards, and I had no care. It was a dull fight, and I even said, look, CBS, as effective as he is, and I rate him, but they say that he's never in a boring fight, but actually, when I think back, he is. Almost a lot of his fights are boring, except for where he gets the knockouts or he taking big shots. Like, he's not a very fun fighter to watch. There's the first McCarthy fight was a decent one, but again, his fights are always decent when he's getting hit. It's not like, oh, they're decent the other way, except for maybe when he might get a knockdown or a knockout or something. But yeah, they're just very scruffy. They're just not classics. They're not fights that you go back and you sit down and you remember. So in terms of watching him live, I probably won't do that again, but I do rate and respect him highly. I think he gives everyone problems at this point in time. And the chin is unquestionable. It's at a time it's gonna fail him. If the chin fails everyone at some point, but until it does, like, you're gonna have to be able to you're gonna have to be able to just like put a huge beat down on him to sort of subdue him, because that's one thing. He's got heart, he's got grit, he's got determination, and he's willing to come through the fire to get out the other side, and that's something I'll rate him. In terms of Richard, I don't know what he was on. Like, obviously this was your moment. You were never going to get a easier path to a world title. Not to say that CBS is an easy opponent, but they don't get any easier for you. Like, Noel Gvozdyk is not going to be an easy fight for you. Jair Pataya, well, you already didn't take that fight for a reason. Zerdo Ramirez, as even though you're probably the bigger guy, he's a southpaw, which is not a style that you're really comfortable with if you can't keep the distance with Billam-Smith. So yeah, I don't know what he does next. Whatever he does, I hope he gets it together. But yeah, that's really what I kind of want to say about that. And that whole day is very forgettable to me, if I'm totally honest.
Cool. I'm going to address this question because this is probably the antidote. What is Angel Fernandez teaching him? It appears that Angel Fernandez is just not the answer to anybody. He never has been, and he probably never will be. I shouldn't say that because obviously he could improve. But there's no track record here of Angel Fernandez having anything that makes him qualified to be taking a guy like Richard Riakporhe to a world title. I'm sorry. He just hasn't got anything in my estimation. He certainly hasn't got the ability to motivate a fighter when the chips are down in a fight, which is ultimately what you're supposed to be doing. In terms of fight management, game management, that is the most important element of a trainer's job. Yeah. My job as a boxing trainer, as you know, those of you who don't know, I am a boxing coach. I do coach youngsters in amateur boxing. My job as a coach is to give my kids the tools necessary to deal with every style. You know, my guys walk into the ring, they don't know if their opponent's southpaw, orthodox, pressure fighter, stylist, switch hitter, power puncher, pressure fighter, 6 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, whatever. They've got to be able to deal with it. And I have to give those fundamental skills. And the fundamental one that I find is the jab. If you can't work a jab, you need to go back in the gym. A guy of the physical dimensions of Richard Riakporhe, he should have a jab that absolutely terrorizes the opposition. It would be a dream for me as a trainer to have the likes of a Richard Riakporhe as my charge. Because I'm looking at him, I'm working with him day in and day out and working on those fundamentals, knowing that if he gets those right, more often than not, he's going to win fights, because those fundamentals, they very rarely change. Different types of jab, flick jab, power jab, you know, hooks, uppercuts, straights, screw shots, slip counters, combinations, 1-2-3s, things that he needs to have as bread and butter, he lacked. And in all honesty, some of those things are the same things I said of AJ before he went to Ben Davidson. And then all of a sudden went to Ben Davidson, and those things came back. And we saw the performances improved immediately. So it's clear to me, Richard needs to go and find himself a new trainer.
I can't believe Boxer got 41 minutes of the show after such a trash event. Muller, I apologize. They wasn't supposed to get this long, bro.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna get to the good stuff now.
Cool. Right. So we move on. Let's go to the Puerto Rican Matchroom DAZN card, which you covered. I didn't unfortunately get a chance to watch the whole card. I saw the highlights of Paro, Matias. So
you didn't see the actual fight? It's that fight?
No.
Okay, cool. That's the only real one to chat about. I mean, look, there was some good fights on the undercard, but there was no fight that actually ended in a stoppage. So just a real quick talk about Stephanie Piero's fight against Diana Tapia. Is at the welterweight limit, so that's kind of like the last weight class of any major depth in the women's division. You kind of get a bit of you do get sort of a little bit of talent there, and that's obviously where Sandy Ryan is campaigning at the moment. So this is like a precursor to that fight. Stephanie got very good. She's got good power, good movement, very springy, but this was her first 10 rounder, so she does need a couple more fights before getting into a fight with someone like Sandy Ryan or anyone else at the top of the 147 division. But on Diana Tapia, she actually had her last 5 fights. I think she was 7-2 as a pro, but her last 5 fights were all undefeated fighters, and she beat them all. So she wasn't like, you know, she wasn't a scrub as such. And she was used to fighting at heavier weights. She had come down from, at one point she fought a fight at 183 pounds and has kind of come down steadily down to where she is now. So she's a naturally bigger woman who's prepared to take shots. But Stephanie landed some good shots on her, started to tire in the middle to late rounds, but then in sort of round 8, 9, and 10, managed to find the extra tank, extra reserve, started putting some punches together, and at times you felt like maybe she could have got Diana Tapia out of there, but a little bit too late. Obviously, the 2-minute rounds, everything, but it was a fun fight for the most part. If you guys haven't seen it, check the highlights, and just check the highlights of Stephanie in general. She's normally very good. She's normally good fun to watch. There were several other fights. Yet the Yankiel Rivera fight, I'm worried about him. His punch resistance is an issue. I've seen him on several occasions get hit by fairly innocuous looking shots, and be on Bambi legs. But he's, I don't see him. He might get to a world title, but I can't see him doing anything really outside of that. Angel Fierro obviously was beaten by a Dominican fighter on, I think it's Santiago. Yeah, Alfredo Santiago, I was just about to say, who funny had already previously been in the ring with Devin Haney, and Devin Haney beat Santiago. I think it was by stoppage actually. But yeah, so but that was a very good fight as well. There was also a fun fight
over 12 rounds.
What, the Haney one?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I remember the fight. It was a dominant fight. Then
he lost by TKO to Ricardo Nunes.
Oh, sugar. Okay, cool. Right. Anyway, yeah. So with regards to that, fair enough. Then we talk about the main event. Now, this fight, funny enough, if anyone watched the breakdown, Basis Picks, I predicted exactly how this fight would play out, minus the last couple of rounds. because my whole thing was, I said that in the first half of this fight, Liam Paro is gonna pick up a very big and commanding lead. I'm thinking like 5-1, 4-2. But my issue was, once if you've got Matias sort of chipping away from time after time, just bit by bit, if he just sort of gets into rhythm and just starts sort of working to the body, eventually Paro's not going to be able to move forever. And that was my concern. He's going to build up this healthy lead, but then sort of get taken down the stretch, not be able to really sustain the movement, start taking punishment, and just about fade like right at the end of the fight, and sort of probably get taken out about sort of around 11. That was kind of how I felt. I didn't think I always said he wouldn't be one of the ones that kind of quit on his stall or anything, or they pulled him out on the corner. But I thought that would be the way it would play out. Now, the first half was correct, and I knew him being a southpaw, the way that Subriel Matias shapes up, you can tell that him versus southpaws is never really going to be a great shakes, especially if it's a southpaw that moves or has good footwork. And what I kind of saw from that was, every time Matias thought he had him in range, like you would see Paro spin off from that southpaw angle that Matias isn't used. He's just not used to cutting him off that way. He's not used to pushing a guy or walking to his right hand side to make them have to go to their left, and sort of to sit towards that power hand. That's all alien, and I don't know. Looking at sort of how he did that fight, I don't know if he even trained like the guy was a southpaw. He probably just trained like he trains normally for everyone. And then when the angles started coming in, he just didn't really, he just couldn't figure it out on the day. Not only that, his engine, he didn't have the same work rate that he used to have. So I think that even going into it, he probably underprepared. He was underprepared for the opponent. Probably let the occasion and the hometown comforts get the better of him, and just thought, I'm going to do what I want to do, as I normally do, and it's going to be enough. And shout out to Paro, especially in the second half of the fight, because he done certain tactics which, while I never like when I see them, they're very effective and is very smart. He would hit Matias, and then as soon as he would hit him, he would literally fall into the clinch and grip the hands to the point where then the ref's got to break him. So all the judges see was you was the last person to strike. And he banked a lot of rounds that way, just stopping Matias from being able to do anything. Matias couldn't break the clinches. There was a couple of times where he did come in with the head on a couple of occasions. The point he got off, I thought, was very, very unfair and uncalled for. But the referee, to his credit, did on numerous occasions tell him, back of the head. So while I think he shouldn't have had a point taken off at that point, at least the ref gave him numerous warnings about that. Tony, so you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just want to allude to what you were talking about there about his preparation. That's Subriel Matias's preparation, because as you know, I spend a lot of time looking and researching for information before we get onto the breakdown. And in my research, it appears that Subriel Matias was not training as he should have done. People close to him say that he was running with the wrong people, in that instead of concentrating on and being in camp with his team and, being sheltered away from the madding crowd and all the distraction, he was actually active in that, to the point where apparently, and this is not confirmed, but apparently he was out clubbing the night before. And don't forget, he's in his hometown in Puerto Rico. So, though there could be a lot of distraction.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Keep yourself clothed.
That makes a lot of sense, and it would maybe also make sense as to why his engine looked like it faded towards the end. I've never seen, even though he doesn't go the distance very often, but I've never seen his engine like fall off a cliff like that. Part of that, obviously, I guess Paro did what he needed to do.
But
yeah,
in terms of, I mean, if I may, sorry to interrupt you, Base. I mean, when you talk about what you've just said in terms of his work rate, you know, you have to make it. I think it's so important we understand that this is a guy who's averaging 77 punches around. His work rate is phenomenal in comparison to anybody else in the game. And then all of a sudden, it drops off a cliff. And in literally, I looked at the punch stats. I've got the CompuBox figures right in front of me. Every round, bar 4, he's outpunched. He's outworked. His punch output per round. In round 1, he threw 12 punches. Remember, this guy has an average of 77 punches per round. Yeah? Round 1, he threw 12 punches. Yeah? He got as high as 75 in round 7. 75 and 71. But other than that, he's averaging around the low 50s. And basically, Liam Paro is averaging way above that. He realizes I have to match this guy and his work rate because he has a phenomenal engine. And that is where it all goes wrong. Because if you drop your work rate and a guy goes in saying, I need to up my work rate to be able to match that guy's work rate, well, guess what happens? You're going to get outworked. And that's what happened. Sorry, Base.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I really want to say about it. I mean, it's funny because like Eddie Hearn is obviously laughing either way because he promotes both guys, so he can build, I guess, with Liam Paro. I don't know what he will do with Subriel next. I don't know if there's any rematch clause or anything. But
I see what you're laughing at now.
yeah, but the one thing that I question is, even though he's got both guys and I guess he's happy that, you know, obviously either of his guys has won that fight or whatever, is he going to be more frustrated with the fact that Paro won instead of Matias when he's trying to build this little Puerto Rican crowd, and he knows that in America it's like next to the Mexican fighters, it's the Puerto Rican fighters that have that big sway, and they, you know, they pull up for pull up for the fights and they get behind their people, and you can kind of create a nice little side hustle the same way as he has the fight cards in Mexico from time to time. And while they're maybe not big money spinners for the zone or whatever, they make whatever profit back they need to, because the local market there is strong. And you would want like the local market in Puerto Rico or like in New York to kind of marry up that same thing. Does he have that now? That would be an interesting conundrum, and maybe that's what he would have wanted. Now, obviously, the Australian market's a budding and a booming market as well, but I guess he's going to also be looking at that one, unless they're going to be doing what Top Rank do, and, you know, make them fight at like 11 a.m. in the morning on the Sunday, so that you can get prime time US time. Those hours just ain't really going to be conducive to the overall global market that they're hoping for. It's all right for us, but in terms of the rest of the or the, you know, the big markets that they're trying to appeal to, I don't know if that's what they're looking at. So maybe for him, he may not have been as pleased it was that Paro did get the victory, but, you know, I'm sure he'll readjust. And with regards to this one, Smallsy, I think Stevie Sparky retired, so yeah, he said he's done with boxing. So I don't think we'll see that one. But I would have liked to have seen that fight personally. But yeah, I think he's retired. So Paro may, if he gets a homecoming fight, I'll be pleased for him. And the only thing I will say is these homecoming fights, as we know, they don't really end well these days for the most of the guys. So maybe he wants to stay fighting in America from now on, or the UK, or those places. But yeah, hopefully he can push on to this one, and if he fights Richardson Hitchens next, that would be an interesting fight. I think Jack Catterall might get in the mix if he can't get that the Barboza fight for the WBO. So yeah, It's interesting times. But big congrats to Leon Paro. The game plan was on point, and he showed that he can take punishment, but he also showed that he can do just enough to survive, survive and be competitive in the late rounds as well. And if he needs to, he's not brave enough, or not braver. He's not stupid enough to just be brave. And if he's got to be ugly and nullify and just get through a round to see it to the final bell, he will do, because he was mash up at the end of that fight. But just literally gripping, holding, doing whatever he could to get a hold of his opponent, to stop him from punching. It was, like I said, it's not the nicest thing to see. I don't really like when I see it, but I respect when it works, and it worked perfectly for him. So big congrats to Leon Paro, and shout out to Smallsy, obviously in the building, who on my video he did say, and he never directly said, "Oh, I'm picking Leon Paro," but he said, if Paro wins this fight, don't call it an upset, because this is a legit 50-50 fight. And I agreed with him. I said it prior. I can see where he could win. My issue was just, I thought the gas tank eventually would wear out, and when he starts slowing down, that's where the issue is going to happen. And luckily for him, he managed to keep enough in the engine to see out those last few rounds, where, to his also benefit, Subriel Matias, he slowed down massively as well. So yeah, if there's any questions you want to check in the chat real quick before we move over to Top Rank, I'm cool.
Alexander asked, do you guys think Paro can beat any of the other 140 pounders
to unify? I mean, yes. Personally, because we said, can he beat? Yes, he can. He can beat all of them.
Really?
Will he is another question, but he can. If you think about it, while he's not, remember, he's now just. Matias may not have been the number one guy thought of, but he was definitely the most avoided guy. He was the guy that the only reason you fight him is because he had a belt, and he beat that guy. So if he beat him, there's no reason to say that he can't beat Teofimo Lopez, who blows hot and cold in every other fight that he has, or Isaac Cruz, who is very, very crude and rudimentary. I don't think he has any issues with Isaac Cruz personally. Who's the other champion up? Oh, and Devin Haney. That will be an interesting fight. And
Lopez.
I said Lopez already.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I think for him, the hardest fight for him, I think, would probably be Devin Haney, because of the length and the reach. But again, it's the whole Southpaw orthodox thing. If he can get that right, as he did, I think he'd be all right. I think Tio is his second hardest, and I think Isaac Cruz is the easiest time for him, because he knows exactly what he needs to do in that fight. As long as he's got the engine, don't think you're going to knock him out, but you can outbox him quite easily for 12 rounds, and we've seen it done before. But yeah, cool. That's my thoughts on that.
Cool, guys. So we'll now move over to the card from Las Vegas, Premier Boxing, which was on Amazon, and that was headlined by Tank Davis versus Frank Martin. I'm going to go to the earliest fight that I watched, which was Carlos Adamis versus Terrell Gausha. Goucher, although, yeah. Where are you? Here we go. I found out something really unbelievable about Carlos Adamis. I've actually seen Carlos Adamis 3 times live because of fights that I've been to in the States, and he's been on the undercard. So as early as Linares Lomachenko, he was on the undercard of that. He's one of 35 kids. He's actually one of 36 kids, because he's got 35 siblings. Anyway, the Dominican Republic kind of dominated 2 out of the 4 big fights on this one, with Adamis in this one and Alberto Puello in the next one. In this particular fight, this was a slow burner. I got it written in big writing, slow burner. Rounds 1 to 6 were hella boring, if I'm being honest. There was very little action from either fighter. The way scoring went, as far as I was concerned, was One round to Adamis, one round to Gausha, the next couple of rounds to Adamis, and the next. So it was very much a, well, let's see how things go. It's not really catching a light until round 7, where it started to open up. And I said, at this point, it looks like Adamis is looking to, someone's had a word in his ear. And the funny thing about having a word in his ear actually is, you know, when we're watching fights in the UK and the corner are shouting expletives, and then the commentator on the side will say, apologies for the industrial language. Yeah. In this particular card, in this particular fight, the translator was shouting what the guy in the corner was saying, and he was giving off the most F-bombs. And I was like, isn't that funny? Our guys apologize, and their guys are translating and including the F-bombs. But anyway, the corner were going ballistic on Adamis, and he basically listened. So round 7 onwards, he opened up, and it was a much better fight. The activity that he started to engage in was far more effective, whereas he was picking soft shots. He wasn't finding with any intensity or power. It all changed from round 7 onwards. And effectively, round 7, he blitzed on Terrell Gausha, and he seemed to have him in a little bit of a tither as to, oh my God, this is different. What have you done? You've opened up. So he went back to his corner, and in round 8, Terrell Gausha came back out, and he let go his hands. So round 8 was a Terrell Gausha round, and that was it. From there on in till the end of the fight, we had all-out action with both guys letting their hands go, hitting each other really hard, nothing too slick. They standing in front of each other. There was no mad running around the ring. It was all about, let me see, can you take my shots? And effectively, Adamis was more dominant in those last 4, 5 rounds, rounds 9, 10, 11, and 12, and was able to win out the fight because of his action in those last rounds. As I said, it was a slow burner. Didn't look like it was going to be anything to write home about. But if you take out the first 5 rounds and just look at the rest of the fight, you will have a very entertaining fight to watch. Your thoughts on this one, Base?
Yeah, look, the right person won, but as you said, it didn't kick into high gear until the second half of the fight, which is okay. Look, I know that both guys ultimately did come up from 154 at some point, but Adames went up to 160 a lot quicker than Terrell Gausha did. So show that you're the bigger guy, show that you're more natural at that weight class. Like, just, you know, do your work early to make it a lot easier for you down the stretch. And in the second half of the bout is kind of where it was more ebb and flow. The first half was tactical, but yeah, second half it sort of kicked up, caught fire a bit. But it was just one of those fights. It never got to where it could have gone to. But it was also a fight where, even though I looked at it and said, well, look, it's a world title on the line, it's, you know, so that makes it look good. It was an overwhelming favorite in Adames against a very, you know, a sort of a very rank outsider on the other side. So yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on it. The right person won, but it wasn't particularly memorable, and Adames didn't necessarily do his stock any great shakes, so he's gonna have to try and get those unifications. I know, you know, PBC don't like to necessarily work with people when they don't have to, but he's gonna have to try and unify to make himself interesting moving forward. And Audi, no, it's not an old Inter Milan shirt. I mean, it's the classic colors, but yeah, no, it's just literally it's a sports shirt, an Umbro shirt that I've got to go gym in. I got this one. Obviously, I got the referees one, which you guys is always killing me about, and I got one that's red and black. They're just to go gym, bang weights, go running if and when I do run, which is not very often these days. But yeah.
Cool. So now we move on to the next fight, which was Gary the Last Antoine Russell versus Alberto Puello. Again, Dominican Republic in Alberto Puello. 17-0 Gary Russell against 22-0 Alberto Puello. Gary Russell, 17 KOs from 17 fights. He's one of only 3 fighters currently who are ranked with a knockout ratio of 100%. The other 2 fighters being Virgil Ortiz and Artur Beterbiev. So yeah, this was very heavily swayed in the Gary Antoine Russell camp. There was a lot of, the hype around him, the talk about the pre-fight hype was talking about him and his journey to where he is now. Obviously, he's one of many Gary Russells because there are 5 of them, I think, all named Gary Russell, which was the name of their dad, Gary, who passed away 2021. And now his older brother is his trainer. Anyway, moving to the action. This was an interesting fight. I've got a hell of a load of notes here. So Southpaw versus Southpaw. Round 1, I gave that to Gary Russell. He just looked very sharp coming out the gate. Hopefully, as I speak, you'll see some of the type of action I'm talking about. Very, very quick with his jab. He's got a very active posture, moving his head a hell of a lot. Lots of good pressure in round 1 and 2. I gave him 1, 2. In round 3, he shortened the distance between himself and Puello because Puello was circling and using a lot of movement, which he does continually through the fight. But Gary Russell was able to shorten that distance in round 3. And as a result, able to hit Puello with greater power and with greater speed of his combinations in round 3. So round 3 went to Gary Russell as well. Round 4, you could see that Russell was getting the right information. He increased his pace. I noticed he started throwing triple jabs. He's very good with his jab. And with that triple jab, I even noticed that the commentators said that Gary Russell is painting Puello with his jab. You can see from the highlights here that he does use a lot of jab. Now, in fact, in this situation, the jab was falling short, as you see. But I think later in the fight, he gets much closer with that jab. Round 5, that was the first round that I gave to Puello. The punch count was low, but Puello was very good at slipping what Gary Russell was throwing, and then he became much more effective at counterpunching. He also, in that round, was warned for holding, Puello that is. Round 6, I gave as a swing round. Very good action in round 6 from both fighters. Puello doing most of the counter punching, as you can see, the jab combinations, the good head movement there from Gary Russell, the speed of hands. But as you see, Puello counter punching beautifully as I'm speaking, throwing that big 1-2 to everything that Gary Russell was throwing, and getting in with good shots both to the head and body. Round 7, I gave that to Puello. Round 8, I gave that to Puello. Round 9 was a big round for Gary Antoine Russell. Not only was it a big round, but Puello had a point deducted for holding. So effectively, round 9 becomes a 10-8 round. And Gary Russell reestablishes his dominance. Round 10, there was a low blow in round 10, but I gave that round to Gary Antoine Russell, 10-9. At this point in the fight, at round 10, they did show the punch stats, and Gary Antoine Russell had almost doubled up on the amount of punches that Puello had thrown, but Puello had a much higher connection percentage, which meant that the punch counts were very similar going into the last 2 rounds. Then in round 11, I gave that round to Puello. That was a big round for Puello. He needed to stay off the ropes. And that's kind of what he did. He stayed off the ropes as best as he could. And then round 12, he continued his charge and opened up on Russell, and he won round 12. So he won round 11 and round 12. Now, as you probably can tell, the decision went to Alberto Puello, but by my scorecard, I had this 115-113 to Gary Antoine Russell. Obviously, I had a swing round in round 6, but it was a close fight. One of the judges who had it as it was a split decision, the first judge, he had the fight 118-109 to Gary Antoine Russell.
Tony, what you said 115-113, is that including the point deduction?
That does include the point deduction.
Okay, so was there a draw round in there, or how does that
round
connect?
6.
Round six. Okay. All right, just double checking. Thank you.
So yeah, a very interesting fight. I did enjoy that. As I said, I saw the decision differently to 2 judges. I certainly didn't see it wide the way that one of the judges did towards Russell. But yeah, very entertaining fight. Base, your thoughts?
Well, that's the only fight on the card I haven't actually seen in its totality yet. I saw all of the Adamis fight. I saw bits and pieces of that one. Then I saw obviously Benavidez and Tank. What I will highlight is, I mean, no, them scorecards is, it would appear that maybe the Puello scorecards are more in alignment because they're like, you know, they're 1 round apiece in terms of the difference, whereas the other one is just so vastly wide. You have to look at it and think that it has to be an outlier. It can't be a true reflection of the fight if the other 2 are that close to each other. So that's kind of what I will look at for that. But what I do want to do is give a very quick shout out and congratulations to Ismael Salas, because he was cornering the first 2 fights.
Yeah.
So imagine he's not even getting a chance to warm up with Alberto Puello for the second fight, because he's in the corner of Carlos Adamis, doing the first fight. And I don't think that was an accident in terms of the timing and the running of the schedule. Surely you know how these who's fighter, and there's supposed to be breaks in between and whatnot. But yeah, he didn't even need to go backstage. So shout out to him for being able to mastermind 2 victories on the night. That's what I will say. In terms of Antoine Russell, it's funny because I've bet against, not physically, but I've bet against him before, and he always seems to get the decision, even when I'm like, I'm still not sure. I feel like there's something there, but you're not at the level I think that you believe you are. And the way he was acting with the first Puello fight, which is what ended up allowing Rolly Romero to get in there, and then the drugs test, which kind of came out of nowhere, which never got cleaned up, and then the Ishmael Barroso thing and all of that. Yeah, he kind of went down in my estimation from there. And the fact that he chose not to have this fight before, maybe he kind of knew that this was just not a good style for him overall. But yeah, now it's another chance to see he's either got to rebuild, or this is maybe just another exposure of another PBC hype job potentially. I won't give him that label just yet, but there's, I need to see what he does next. That's what I'll say.
I mean, what I would say is, I think there's enough there to say they could rerun that fight. That was an entertaining fight. They could rerun that fight, and I'd be happy to see that again. Anyway, let's move on. Good action there. The next fight was the co-main. The monster, the Mexican monster, David Benavidez against Alexander Gvozdyk. Now, wow, this was some fight. Let me find my action. There we go. The punch king, David Benavidez, who has the record of being the fighter in the rankings who throws the most 4 and 5 punch combinations. Now, in the early rounds, he didn't look like that guy. He took his time. I will say he come in a little bit on what I thought was a little bit weighty side. Obviously, he didn't have to cut weight like he normally does for light heavy. But when I saw him on the scales, I kind of thought to myself, I'm not sure if he's trained. He's carrying a little bit around the waist, a few extra pounds, I thought. On the night, he did actually weigh in at 189. So maybe his days are going back down to 168, might be numbered. He did say that he thinks he can go back down there. He still wants to fight Canelo at 168. But yeah, this was his debut at 175. And let's go through the action. As you can see, I've got some footage from somebody in the crowd here for you. In the first round, Gvozdyk can't stop Benavidez moving forward. Benavidez literally just came out of the corner and straight to work into the face of Gvozdyk, and he just let his hands go. He wasn't throwing his usual combinations, but what he was picking was very easy to land for him. You see that kind of situation where he stands in front of his opponent, he sees off Gvozdyk's pokes, because I can't call them jabs. They're not, there's nothing in that. You see that, what he just threw? There's nothing in his punches. And that was the way Gvozdyk threw his punches through the first half of the fight. He didn't throw anything with any intentions. Everything was, oh, this might land. And if it lands, oh, whoopee-doo. But he didn't throw anything with bad intentions. He literally was just pouring away. As you can see there, those paws might hurt. He's a big guy. But they were paws. They weren't like vicious shots where you go, let me hurt this guy from the get-go. He's coming up into my weight category. Let me dominate him from the off. No, I'm pouring. See, he's pouring. And in doing so, he lets David Benavidez walk into his kill zone at that distance that you can see right now and basically tee off with his hooks and uppercuts, which David is an expert at. So round one, Benavidez gets to work. Round two, Gvozdyk does little clubbing, but little else. Benavidez, great head movement. He's very elusive at getting away from whatever tip taps Gvozdyk is throwing. As you can see now, Benavidez hands nice and high. If Gvozdyk made any effort to try and put some purchase on those punches, they'd go through the guard of Benavidez. But he doesn't. He's tapping away. And so Benavidez is happy to just have his hands up to his ears and just have those light touches, touch his gloves, and then come back with his own punches. As you can see, the difference in power is immense. Round three, tapping by Gvozdyk, no power. Ben ripping. He is ripping away at Gvozdyk. He's taking those tippy taps, and Benavidez is ripping into the body now. He's finding a regular home for that hook to the body, both left side and right side. Round four, outstanding double left and double left uppercut from Benavidez. If you guys can remember the punch sequence, he lets go a double uppercut to the head of Gvozdyk, and it kind of it tips his head back twice violently, and on the end of it, he rips a right hook, and it's like, wow. this guy's in trouble because he is getting absolutely the bejesus kicked out of him by Benavidez at this stage. Round 5, round 4 and 5, all the same stuff going on. Benavidez. The tap jab is useless, I've written for Gvozdyk. And once again, like I mentioned it for the last fight, Benavidez right now is painting a picture on Gvozdyk. He's literally picking where he's going to put his brush strokes and slicing apart this guy. Round 6, 7, round 8. First round to Alexander Gvozdyk. More punches, more accurately. And this is where he wakes up in round 8. He literally just starts to throw the punches with more intention. And I think this is what you might be seeing now in terms of the way he's throwing his punches. And just follow the action here. He's still not really putting full power in, but at least he's got, you can see there, that little shoe shine action at the end of round 12 that Gvozdyk put together. That was his first kind of shoe shine punching. And there's the scorecards. You can see the green scores were Benavidez, and Gvozdyk literally only won in the punch stats in 3 rounds out of the 12. But effectively, Benavidez, he seemed to slow down after round 8 and 9. He seemed not to be able to hit Gvozdyk with the same picking shots that he did in the early rounds, where he was lighting him up. And that allowed Gvozdyk to get back into the fight. So in 8, 9, 10, 11, Gvozdyk was able to apply the pressure and use his own artillery to then start causing an effect on Benavidez, which he hadn't done in the whole first half of the fight. And this is the bit that is the worrying bit, because you kind of think, we've seen this in the past where Benavidez has great engine and he's able to see things out and he's able to get late stoppages. Well, in this fight, it looked like his engine had just sort of gone and he was just working on gas through the last rounds of the fight. And that allowed Gvozdyk the opportunity to let his hands go and, more importantly, outscore David Benavidez. Now, Danny Fight Fan might be in the house. He might be able to tell me the last time David Benavidez lost 3 rounds in a row. I don't think it's happened for a long time.
He lost 3 rounds in a row against Caleb Plant.
He did? Okay. What was that, 3 fights ago?
2 fights.
Okay. I never really noticed that, but
remember, the general consensus was he lost the whole first half of the fight, but came back obviously in the second half. He won rounds in the first half, but he lost the first half.
But he was much stronger in the second half than he was in the first half, which is what you generally tend to see from Benavidez. And in this case, it was a total role reversal. I had this fight scored 115, 113 to Benavidez at the end of the fight. Base, your thoughts?
Right. So I wish I was going to go back through the watch along and see, because I couldn't remember the rounds that I gave to both guys on the night, but I do remember what my scorecard was. And I watched the fight back the other day just to sort of double see, and yeah, 115, 113. That's me. Seemed, but the thing is, I had it the other way around, and I'll tell you why. This is one of the few fights, right, where, I mean, look, I'm not a big CompuBox guy, and in terms of using that to tell you how the fight went, because that can be very misleading. But it usually does give you some insight into kind of what's going on. The one thing that I will say with this fight, there were a lot of shots that David Benavidez was throwing that weren't landing. I'm not even just talking about hitting arms and gloves. I'm talking about even some of his body shots. If you look at, if you go back and watch the fight, there's several times where he's actually throwing a shot to the body, and the punch, actually, Tony, take that off the screen because I want people to kind of see what I'm about to do. So he's actually throwing the punch, and the punch is actually going past the body, and it's his forearm or the top part of his glove that is maybe hitting the side of Gvozdyk's body. Like, so there's no scoring shot there. I saw it on numerous occasions in the early parts of the fight. Or there was a lot of times where, you know, punches, arms, gloves, and nothing, you know, and it's not getting through. Now he's being very busy, he's being very active, but the shots ain't connecting. So I'm not giving him credit for those shots. But obviously I did say to myself, even on the watch along, he might get the consideration. But I'm scoring it from literally what I'm seeing, and I'm not seeing these punches connect. There's a lot of volume, nothing's really connecting. So that's how I kind of looked at it. Now, I can't remember what rounds were what, but I believe I gave the first 2 rounds to David Benavidez. I think I gave the 3rd round to Gvozdyk. I gave the 4th round to Benavidez. Then I think I gave rounds 5 and 6 to Gvozdyk. After that, I gave 7 and 8 to Gvozdyk. I gave 9 to Gvozdyk. I think I edged the 10th round to Benavidez, but it was, you know, close. Then rounds 11 and rounds 12, I gave to Gvozdyk because his shots were actually getting through. And again, that's the thing. And obviously, in the second half of the fight, it was a lot easier to score because now you don't even have the work rate from David Benavidez. He's having very good. He's almost trying to become the moments guy in the fights. He's not doing anything. He's tired. He's languishing. He's labored on the ropes. But he'll try and come back with one big sweeping left hook, hoping it hits, so that's what the judges will see. One maybe shoe shine combo, which is hitting the gloves. But he's doing it in very short bursts throughout the rounds now, as opposed to what is actually, you know, as opposed to the consistent work rate that Gvozdyk is doing. And yeah, he didn't put a lot of purchase behind his shots early on. And I think, actually, let me not think, because that's, you know, it's not really my job to interpret what he was thinking at the time. But yeah, he didn't really establish his power advantage. He didn't establish his I guess his size advantage in the fight. But one thing that I can say categorically without having to think, this is a fact. If you look at both guys at the end of that fight, only one guy looked like they was in a fight, and it wasn't Gvozdyk. So for the amount of shots that David Benavidez is throwing, that also tells me you couldn't have been landing as many shots as they claimed you was landing, because this guy ain't got a mark on his face, and your face is all swollen up. So of the two of you, one of you either is landing cleaner or is landing a lot more consistently than the other one. So that's the kind of the way I looked at it. I had it 112, 116 to Gvozdyk, but I said, you know, from he didn't get a knockdown or a knockout, I was expecting the scorecards to be the other way. So when David Benavidez won the fight, although I don't think he won the fight personally, I didn't have an issue with it because I knew it was going to happen anyway. And there were certain rounds in there where I gave them to Gvozdyk purely because obviously he did the work in those rounds. He was a lot more, I felt he was a lot more active, and he was pushing the round and pushing the pace. But in those same rounds, Benavidez did have eye-catching moments, or maybe 1 or 2 big-looking punches at points. And I say, okay, I can see if the judge is going to give him that, because that's the one thing they're going to remember. So I didn't have a huge issue with it, except for the 119, 109 scorecard. I thought the 117, 111 was bad as well, but you know, Danny Glover chose to have the same scorecard. So, you know, if you go by CompuBox stats, then fine. But if you just look at that fight, watch the actual fight as a whole on the eye test, look at what punches are actually landing and what punches are not landing. It's just not, that to me just wasn't the fight I saw. And it's very telling that after that fight, Benavidez is talking about, oh, I can, you know, I'll still make 168. I mean, I want to fight him. He's not calling for Bivol. He's not calling for Beterbiev. He's not calling for anyone else at light heavyweight. He's going to go back down to super middleweight. So the one time that you get in the ring with someone that's the same size as you, like, and we're not just talking height, we're talking actual size, body, frame size. Now all of a sudden you you're deciding that you want to go back down to 168. But you know what? If he can still get his body down there, and that's what he wants to do, and he wants to fight the naturally smaller guys, that's okay. Because you know what is always going to happen to him is the same thing that happened to who's the other what's his name, Jared Hurd. The same thing happened to who else? I mean, well, maybe not Devin Haney as such, but all these guys that constantly drain their body down into these unnatural weight classes, eventually you pay the price somewhere, and the punch resistance goes sooner or later. And if his punch resistance goes, he's gonna be in problems. But yeah, overall, I thought Gvozdyk should have pushed the pace a lot more. Personally, he started to a bit in the last rounds, but even then, it still seemed like it's almost like he didn't want to hurt David. He never delivered any full-blooded shots in any round. There was some way he put more purchase on them, but he just never really became the nail. He never hammered the nail into the canvas, as they will say. So yeah, good fight. Benavidez clearly now sees where his limitations are, and clearly maybe his gas tank isn't where it needs to be, and maybe he will end up going back to Memo Heredia, sorry, so that he can get back on whatever scientific shakes and products and stuff to get that stamina and that endurance back, because like I've never seen him fall off a cliff like that. Maybe it's because he had to start pushing around the bigger guy. Maybe it's because you got an extra 7 pounds on your frame that you don't normally carry into the ring. Maybe it's because the punches you're getting hit with are a lot harder than you're used to taking, thereby taking more energy out of you. So there's a big combination of things. But I'm interested to see what happens with him. I hope Gvozdyk doesn't decide to pack it in again just yet. But if he does, I also won't hold it against him. And again, he had a tremendous career for his talent and sort of what he's achieved. He just may end up now, being looked at as maybe the fourth guy in that famous Ukrainian team, as opposed to maybe the number 3 guy. But I'm sure he won't be too despondent about that. That's my opinion.
Cool. So that leads us, ladies and gentlemen, to the main event of the evening, the last and final bout that we will be reviewing for the night.
One sec, Tony. One sec. Audi alias TT, I would say yes, there should be some sort of either elevated to full ring level, or they should be watching on monitors. Watch on a monitor with whether it's even if they watch on a monitor that has only one angle, and that's just the one angle they see, but it's an angle at eye level to be able to see the entire thing. I think that would probably be beneficial, in my opinion. Your opinion?
It's a tough one. I mean, the reason they are where they are is because they don't want to impede people's views in the ringside seats, which they would clearly do if they were sat higher up on the ringside. I definitely don't want to see anybody in a booth watching a TV on one angle. I kind of feel you need to have spatial awareness, and with a booth watching on TV, I just kind of feel like you're blinkered,
Okay.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Audi. I think we have to be happy with the status quo. What I would condone open scoring. We've seen it before. For years I've been a fan of open scoring. I want to see it more often, which is where you see the scoring at the end of each round.
Do you know what I would like? And I've said this before. Before we get to the main event, guys, thank you guys for rocking with us. Good crowd in attendance. Everyone in the chat interacting is what we love. I personally keep the 3 judges at ringside, make them do their job. I want 2 almost like VAR judges away from ringside, watching on monitors, like with they can have the sound of the arena without commentary or anything if they want it, or they can just be judging in silence if they want. But you should have those two. They should have to do their scorecards as well. And then if there's either like a mad, scorecard that's out of line with the first two in the arena, you look at the two from VAR, and if their scorecards are closer in aligned with the, sort of the two correct ones, then maybe that way you can either call for you can challenge the decision at the end, you can use their scorecards to tally up as well, and then you can give a conclusive, okay, this is the final scorecard. These were the rounds that were unanimously decided upon. So because of that, the winner is this person because they won these rounds, etc. Or what are you doing?
Sorry.
It wouldn't be a show without Tony doing Tony things.
Playing with the technicals. I'm sorry.
But yeah, or they should have a case whereby, so you can either challenge it that way, or you use their scorecards to determine if another judge has basically had a howler. Because if those cards align with the others with two of the others in the arena, well, that's 4-1. What were you looking at? And in that case, now we can pull you up in front of a committee and we can talk about why your scorecard is so much different to everyone else's. That's what I would like.
Agreed. 100%. 100% on that one, sir. You've got my vote on that amendment to the scoring. Right. So let's move into the as I said, the final fight. Base, I've led the way. Do you want to lead the way on this one?
Yeah, sure, it's fine. I'll talk about this one briefly, and then I'll give my final thoughts after you say what you're saying. Look, Gervonta Davis against Frank Martin. The Tank versus Frank, as I was calling it a lot of the time. Look, ultimately, this was a fight where Frank Martin, the writing was kind of on the wall from the start. He was, doing well, trying to keep distance. But you could tell anytime that Gervonta Davis even got close to him, Frank Martin's reactions were that of someone that was very concerned about what was about to happen. And the same way he had that arm, like always kind of glued to the top of his head. It wasn't even like he was doing it when a shot was about to come in and it was a very slick movement. He's got it there like, I'm extremely worried about what you're about to throw. And of course you should be, but that's me. The fact that he's even given that telltale sign is what told me instantly, you know what, Gervonta he's all right. He's going to take these shots because he knows that this guy is that concerned about what's coming back at him. All he's got to do is find one opening, and he found the openings fairly early, to be fair. Now, yes, Frank, everyone was like, oh, Frank Martin's like he's taken his first half of this fight and everything, but when you look at it realistically, yeah, it was 4-2 after 6 rounds. That's not, it's a clear lead, but it's not a dominant lead. And then it was 4-3 after 7 and then ended in the 8th. Like, Frank he had success, but that's pretty much all he had. If you look at the movement, like his movement wasn't fluid. His reaction to punches wasn't great. You could tell that he was very concerned every time he kind of got caught or even grazed with something. Every time he got hit with something he didn't like, his initial immediate reaction was to actually jump in for a clinch and try to take Gervonta down to the ground, which is obviously partially from his wrestling background. He just looked out of his depth, and everything looked like he was just pushing against the tide rather than boxing and moving and being sort of confident. He caught Gervonta with some big shots, and realistically, what I will say is a guy who's heavier handed than Frank Martin will do more damage with those same shots. So Gervonta, as he's got those boxing skills, he needs to employ and get back to using some of that. And he can't just be walking people down like he has been, because sooner or later he's going to get in there with someone that will have that punching power, whereby that lapse of defense that he has is gonna cause him, or his punch resistance is gonna fail him, because there's only so long that you can, again, trust that chin and, you know, take those punches. But outside of that, but Gervonta, he knew what he was doing, even when he was taking a lot of those shots. I'll give him, you know, I want to give him, it was all tactical, because even the feints, a lot of the time he was feinting, and you would see Martin react, and it's a big reaction. So every time those reactions are happening, extra energy is draining out of the gas tank, extra nervous energy is building up. And to me, that is just what he was planning. Like, all right, I'm just want to keep you working, because you ain't got the stamina for this fight. You're a big guy for this weight. I'm not as big as you at the weight. I'm a lot easier to, you know, it's a lot easier for me to make this than it is for you. So yeah, I'm just gonna make you have to exert your energy, and I know I'll get to you sooner or later. And, you know, to his credit, that's exactly what happened, and that's what he did. So good performance, but I still ain't gonna give him. I can't give him no big punch, no big credit for it, because he was an overwhelming favorite to win. He's fighting a guy that didn't start boxing till he was 19. Which, yeah, if you're a light heavyweight upwards, that's not really too bad, because the levels in athleticism and the need for technique is a lot different in the higher weights with the bigger guys. But, you know, down at 135, that's ancient. If you start boxing any later than, say, like 12, 13, then you're in problems. And yeah, he was basically a fully fledged adult, probably finished growing and everything by the time he started boxing. So yeah, the writing was on the wall. Tank needs to step it up and start again fighting the people in the top 5 of the division he's campaigning in, not the top 5 from 130 or 126, or guys at 140 that are having to either come down or having to take rehydration clauses or do weigh-ins at 3-4 in the afternoon. That's what I want to see. Once I see you in there with those guys, then I can know where exactly to rate you. The eye test shows me that you knock people out, and that's great, and I know it's very highly entertaining. But, you know, knocking out people that you're supposed to knock out isn't a great achievement. It's not something that I give plaudits for. So that's kind of my opinion on it. But this was a brilliant knockout. The brick hand, as they called it, was great. You know, the in between the fight antics was also fun, was also great. And if for nothing else, he knows how to finish people and finish them well. And it's not like a Deontay Wilder finishing people whereby he's does nothing and then it just happens. But all of his opponents were severely overmatched. Tank has overmatched opponents, but they're credible in their own weight divisions, or they're credible against people that aren't at the world stage. That's how I kind of look at it. But yeah, he did well, and he took some shots. Still got a chin for now, but he can't take too many of them moving forward. That's sort of my thoughts on it. Tony, go for it.
Well, I mean, there's not a huge amount to add to what you said, Base. You pretty much summed up most of what I would have said anyway. I just wanna take you here, because I am a huge fan of Tank, and it's really weird. I got into an argument yesterday, literally, yeah, because I was at Box Cup on Sunday, talking with some fellas. Obviously, we now knew the result of the Tank beatdown, and I got into it with some fellas about Tank being the face of boxing. And I'm like, you guys don't understand. I think Tank is going to be an all-time great. He's a generational fighter. He could fight in many other generations of fighters. Now, that doesn't mean to say you are the face of boxing, because you've got to discount a lot of other people and their achievements. But one thing I will do is I will say, watching Tank of late reminds me of this kid. Does anybody know who this kid is? Yeah.
Bruce Leroy.
Yeah.
Jonah.
Yeah, so I end up talking about the way that Tank is now able to read fighters it almost feels as if he has the glow. He literally, he gave Frank Martin early 2 rounds just to go, I'm looking at what you're going to do. I'm going to feint you here, I'm going to feint you there, because all I want to do is see your reaction when I do this, that, and the other. And he just looks immense at what he's doing. And it's to the point where I kind of look, Audi says, what you smoking, bro? Look, if you haven't seen The Last Dragon, then you best go watch that film, because I'm not joking. I honestly think that Tank Davis has got something about him that makes him be able to just work out what you're doing. And if you watch that film, you'll see what I'm talking about. Shonuff had the beat down on Bruce Leroy until he suddenly realized, hang on, if I listen to my master, I am the master. And he suddenly dawned on him, there's nothing you can do that I can't deal with. And that is where he's at. He literally can look at a guy in Frank Martin, and everything Frank does, he got an answer for. He literally, yeah, it's a great film. It's one of my favorites. It's a music video, if I'm being honest, but yeah, it's a great film. And, you know, Davis is literally looking at guys now and just going, no matter what you got, I got the antidote. And Frank's running around, and, you know, Davis is just walking down corner to corner, rope to rope, going, go on, do your best, because I got the answer. I am the master. And, you know, I'm showing you because you can see it. Frank is perplexed. What the hell do I do? I try to box him. I give him hand speed. I use effective jabs. Everything that I've been taught, he has an answer for. And I'm being honest, I like Shakur Stevenson. But right now, if Tank is active, I mean, he's obviously had his little break of incarceration. He's come back out. He started to get himself into the zone of training and fighting. And I honestly believe if he keeps himself active and away from any distraction, there's possibly nobody can beat him. He's heavy-handed as a mule, kicks. And he has the boxing IQ. You know, he has a bit of Ray Leonard. He has a bit of Duran. You know, he has a bit of Aaron Pryor about him. But ultimately, he's seeing what you've got, and he always has the answer. When all is said and done, there might be less talented fighters with better resumes than Tank. I'm not going to argue with that, Dunfor. I am not going to argue that one, because that's what the argument was yesterday. He ain't the face of boxing. As much as I think he is the most entertaining boxer in the game, including Inoue, including Crawford, including Canelo, including Usyk, and those are the real daddies of the game. I think this kid is magic, but he has to step up his game and start to deliver against the best of his generation. In the same way we were talking about Wilder hasn't fought anyone, and then we started saying when he lost to Fury, well, who's Fury won against? Because Wilder didn't beat anybody apart from Luis Ortiz. Now we're looking at Fury in the same way. Actually, was your resume really that good? And so, the question is asked, is Tank the face of boxing? No, he's not. But Tank Davis is the lightweight Wilder, made a career fighting nobodies in his weight class. Not complete nobodies, but he has definitely, as Base said, he has made sure that he's fought the good people from lighter weights and brought them up, or he's fought the good people from higher weights and stripped them down. Not too dissimilar to what Floyd did in his Money Mayweather days. But yeah, we now need to see Tank unify, which he's never done. We need to see him start to fight all the movers and shakers in his own division, clean up a division, go up a division, clean that one up, because several fighters of lesser quality and talent have done that. George Kambosos, Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, to name but a few.
Do you know what, Tony? Sorry, I don't even want him to go up to 140. This is his third weight class. Well, technically it's his fourth, right? Because he started his career very early at 126. Stay at 135, but clean it out. Show me that you're that guy there, because that's still your fourth weight division. I don't need you to go to 140 and prove anything. I just want you to beat the best guys that are there, and then if you're that guy, then the guys that come out from 130, then you deal with them as well, or you deal with the next generation and you bow out, or however you want to do that, and I will give you all the credit that you need and you want. But for all of this, as what what we've been doing, I just can't give you the same plaudits that other people are with the whole, well, the eye test tells me this. Eye test don't mean nothing when you can't apply it with a measurable, a metric that you can quantify.
Yeah. Jay Green, Inoue will never move up to Tank's weight division. He's not got that size. He's just not big enough to be at lightweight.
Yeah, he's already on his fourth. That's 7 weight divisions. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. So yeah. Well done, Tank. Very entertaining as always. The Ghostbuster busted the ghost. I thought that was quite a funny.
At the start, yeah, that was live. I give him that.
So if you didn't notice, his whole team wore Ghostbuster outfits on the back of their jackets, because of course Frank Martin is known as the Ghost. But yeah, well done, Tank, and we will be, waiting to see if we get the so-called muted super fight between him and this guy. I'll be happy if they make that.
Yeah. So I'm looking, like I said, that one. I want that one. I want the Berinchek fight, the Shakur fight. If Navarrete's there, I'll take that. Hell, you know what? Even fight. I know that it's not going to be the same thing, but all right, fight Kambosos. Like, beat Kambosos in a better fashion than the other guys did as well, innit? Fight, what's his name? Jose Zepeda. Like, maybe not right now, but a couple fights from now. Like, these are the guys that are going to be the, sort of the top of that division. Fight those guys.
Yeah,
and I'll have nothing else to say.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long show. We nearly hit the 2-hour limit, but we thank you all who have stayed with us through this entire show. It has been a heavy weekend on boxing, a lot of action to review. May I say a big shout out to, I believe might have some new viewers who joined me having a conversation with them at the Harrogate Box Cup on Sunday. Saw some lively action, some very good young talent there. John Joe Callahan, if you get to see that kid, he's very good. Double European champion. Very, very slick operator. Listen out for that name in the future. And Leighton Birchall. Those are my two getaways from this weekend's amateur boxing program. These two fighters were outstanding. And yeah, I'll be definitely looking out for them on the circuit and seeing where they go. Obviously, I will be at the Olympics, so I've started to put the feelers out for seeing who is actually going to be out there in Paris for the Olympics. So, with that being said, gonna just say that's everything. My socials are down below. Thank you, Base. Tony the Pugilist Boy on Instagram, TwitX. and YouTube. On Instagram is a little bit extra. Pugilistic Pugilistic on Instagram.
Ladies and gentlemen, mine, BaseDaKID, the hardcore casual on YouTube. There may not be a casual stream tomorrow, only because I do have to travel to Birmingham. So if I can do it before I leave, I will do. If not, I'll do it when I'm actually up there. Maybe Thursday, or maybe even we'll do a live basis picks on Friday or something. But yeah, there's that. Instagram, BaseDaKID, and on Twitex it's B_A_S_E, or just type in BaseDaKID. I think it does come up. And on TikTok, BaseDaKID.thc. And yeah, I've started putting some stuff on there as well. But yeah, shout out to everyone that's been in attendance. A shout out to everyone who pulled up and did what I asked with all of the emojis. You're all amazing. This is the best community on YouTube, like bar none. And I even say that with, you know, all respect to United View and everyone else. Like, undefeated community is where it happens. So shout out to all you guys. You're amazing. We will catch you next week. But until then, have a great night, get some rest, and yeah, we'll catch you on another one. But peace out.
Peace out, guys.